For 1,000 years, communism has not worked. Communism or the concept of communism has not worked. I tend to doubt it's going to work this time.
Here's Donald Trump on Moorhan's Umdami.
You know, I'm so torn because I would like to see the new mayor do well because I love New York. I really love New York. When I left New York for Washington, New York was doing really well, but there were some bad signs. The bad sign was a guy named de Blasio. So the signs of de Blasio, that was the beginning, and it was bad. This one, we're going to, look, for 1,000 years, communism has not worked. Communism or the concept of communism has not worked. I tend to doubt it's going to work this time.
Did you see his victory speech?
No, it's literally never worked. Yeah, I thought it was a very angry speech, certainly angry toward me, and I think he should be very nice to me. You know, I'm the one that sort of has to approve a lot of things coming to him, so he's off to a bad start.
That's a little of everything with Trump right there. First off, 100% I believe he loves New York.
Okay, so picture this. You're Donald Trump. Your entire political brand is built on strength, on winning, on being the deal maker who gets things done, on having total control over the Republican Party. And then you suffer a humiliating defeat on the Senate floor in front of cameras with the whole country watching. Republican senators, your own party, vote against you. They join with Democrats to overturn your signature tariff policies, the policies you've been bragging about for years, the policies you claim are making America strong and prosperous. And senators from both parties reject them, say they're harming American businesses, say they're damaging U.S. competitiveness, say they need to be overturned. And the vote isn't even close. It's bipartisan. 4 Republican senators defect, join with all the Democrats, and your tariffs get overturned 51-47. That's a clear majority rejecting your policy, rejecting your judgment, rejecting your leadership. And you're watching it happen, unable to stop it, unable to prevent members of your own party from voting against you. And the humiliation is public. Cameras capture everything. Senators giving speeches about why your policies are wrong. Media calling it one of the most humiliating defeats of your political career. Analysts saying your own party doesn't trust your judgment. And you can't spin this as a victory. Can't claim you're winning. Can't pretend this is part of some master plan. Because everyone saw what happened. Your own party rejected you, voted against your signature policy, and dealt you a massive credibility hit. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
He built his family, his fortune, his fame, all of those things as he was literally building the skyline of New York, right? At one time in the 80s and 90s, there was more Trump buildings than anything else, right? Less now for a series of reasons. But I do believe he loves that city, and I know for sure his kids love that city. And despite everything, as he points out, he doesn't want it to collapse. That's one part. The other part, of course, is that the speech, yes, it was very interesting to watch that acceptance speech because the speech was seriously angry and much more guttural and jihad-like than the soft lens. Smiley, I'm smiling, so, you know, I'm a good guy, even though I'm going to behead all of you people. So yes, it was an extremely angry speech. And yes, Moron Zamdami might want to be a little nicer to Trump because Trump will control some level of the purse strings as it pertains to federal money that can go to New York.
This is wild. This is absolutely devastating for Trump because Trump's power depends on Republicans fearing him, on them believing he controls the party. That crossing him means losing primaries, losing elections, losing everything. But when Republican senators vote against him publicly, when they're willing to join Democrats to overturn his policies, that shows Trump doesn't have the control he claims, that Republicans are willing to defy him, that his threats don't work anymore. So let's talk about it. Let's break down what the Senate voted on, why Republicans defected, what this means for Trump's influence over the GOP, and why this is such a humiliating defeat. Because trust me, this is huge. This is Trump losing control of his own party. This is Republicans publicly rejecting his leadership, and this is a sign that Trump's power is crumbling. Now, what exactly did the Senate vote on? The Senate voted to overturn Trump's reciprocal tariffs. These were tariffs Trump imposed, claiming they matched what other countries impose on U.S. goods. Trump's argument was that if another country charges 10% tariffs on American products, the U.S. should charge 10% on their products. That's reciprocal or fair in Trump's view. But economists and trade experts said Trump's tariffs didn't actually match other countries' tariffs, that Trump was using inflated numbers. that his tariffs were actually much higher than what other countries charged, and that Trump's tariffs were hurting American businesses, making imported materials more expensive, raising costs for manufacturers, making U.S. products less competitive globally. So there was growing pressure to overturn Trump's tariffs, and the Senate acted. Using the Congressional Review Act, the Senate can overturn recent executive actions. They voted to do exactly that with Trump's reciprocal tariffs, and the vote was 51 to 47. 4 Republicans joined all Democrats to overturn the tariffs. That's a clear bipartisan majority, rejecting Trump's policy. Now, who were the Republican defectors? According to reports, 4 Republican senators voted against Trump. These weren't fringe Republicans. These were mainstream senators who calculated that supporting Trump's tariffs would hurt them politically, that their constituents, especially businesses in their states, were being harmed by the tariffs, that voting to overturn the tariffs was better politics than standing with Trump, and that calculation is devastating for Trump because it shows Republicans are willing to defy him when it benefits them politically, that they're not afraid of Trump's retaliation, that they believe standing against Trump is safer than standing with him. Now, this wasn't Trump's only Senate defeat recently. According to reports, this was the 3rd Senate rebuke of Trump's economic policies in just 7 days. 3 times in 1 week, the Senate rejected Trump's positions. That's not a fluke. That's a pattern. That's the Senate systematically rejecting Trump's leadership on economic policy, and each defeat compounds the previous one, makes Trump look weaker, makes Republicans more willing to defy him, creates a snowball effect where Trump's influence collapses. Now, the reaction to the vote was swift and brutal. Political analysts called it one of the most humiliating defeats of Trump's entire political career. That's harsh language, but it reflects reality. Trump suffering a public bipartisan rejection of his signature policy is humiliating. Commentators said his own party doesn't trust his judgment on trade. That goes to the heart of Trump's brand. He claims to be a brilliant deal maker, an expert on trade, someone who understands economics better than anyone. But if his own party doesn't trust his judgment, that brand is destroyed. Experts describe it as a massive credibility hit. Trump's political power depends on credibility, on people believing he's effective, that he wins, that crossing him is dangerous. But when he suffers public defeats like this, credibility erodes, and with it, his power. Republicans running in 2026 are reportedly feeling freer to run against Trump's positions. They're calculating that Trump is weak enough that they can distance themselves, that they can criticize his policies without facing devastating consequences. And that's a death spiral for Trump, because once Republicans start running away from him, others follow, and Trump becomes politically toxic rather than politically powerful. Now, Trump's response has been predictable but ineffective. He's blaming Democrats for everything, claiming they're obstructing, that they're responsible for problems. But when Republicans are voting with Democrats against him, that blame doesn't stick. He's calling for abolishing the filibuster, saying the Senate should eliminate rules that require 60 votes. But that's desperation. That's not a position of strength. He's attacking the Republican senators who voted against him, threatening them politically. But if those threats work, they wouldn't have voted against him in the first place. So Trump's response just highlights his weakness, shows he can't control his own party, shows his threats are empty. So yeah, this is the story. Trump getting humiliated after the Senate confirms bad news. Republican senators joining Democrats to overturn Trump's tariffs in a bipartisan 51-47 vote. Trump suffering a public devastating defeat that undermines his credibility and shows his waning influence over the GOP. Let's break it down. All right, so let's dig into why Republicans defected and what this vote reveals about Trump's declining power. Because this isn't just about tariffs, this is about Trump's ability to control the Republican Party. Let's start with understanding why these tariffs were unpopular. Trump's reciprocal tariffs raised costs for American businesses. Companies that import materials or components faced higher costs. That made their products more expensive, made them less competitive, and businesses complained loudly. Farmers were hurt by retaliatory tariffs. When Trump imposed tariffs, other countries retaliated. They put tariffs on American agricultural products, and farmers, especially in red states, suffered, lost exports, lost income, and they blamed Trump. Consumers face higher prices. Tariffs get passed on to consumers. Products became more expensive, from cars to electronics to clothing, and voters noticed, blamed whoever imposed the tariffs. Economic data showed the tariffs weren't working. Trump claimed tariffs would bring back manufacturing jobs, would reduce trade deficits, would strengthen the economy, but economic data show mixed results at best. Some sectors were hurt more than helped, and economists said Trump's approach was flawed, so there was substantive policy opposition to the tariffs, not just political posturing. Republicans in competitive states face pressure. Senators up for re-election in 2026, especially in swing states, heard from constituents, businesses complaining, farmers angry, voters concerned about prices, and those senators calculated that supporting Trump's tariffs would cost them votes, so they voted to overturn them. Now let's talk about what this vote reveals about Trump's power. Trump can't enforce party discipline anymore. There was a time when Republicans were terrified of Trump, afraid that if they crossed him, he'd endorse primary challengers, would campaign against them, would destroy their careers. But that fear has diminished. 4 senators voted against Trump publicly, and they're not committing political suicide. They're making calculated decisions that defying Trump is safe. Trump's endorsements aren't as valuable. Trump used to be able to make or break Republican candidates with endorsements, but recent elections have shown Trump's endorsements don't guarantee victory. Some Trump-endorsed candidates have lost, some have struggled, so Republicans aren't as desperate for Trump's approval. Trump's threats aren't as scary. Trump has threatened Republicans who cross him, said he'll campaign against them, support primary challengers, but those threats haven't always materialized. Or, when they have, Trump's candidates have lost. So Republicans have learned Trump's bark is worse than his bite. Policy concerns can override loyalty. When Trump's policies actively hurt constituents, Republicans are willing to vote against him. They prioritize their own political survival over loyalty to Trump, and that's devastating for Trump's influence. Republicans see Trump as politically weak, with Trump facing legal troubles, with his influence waning. Republicans sense weakness, and in politics, weakness invites challenges. So Republicans are testing how much they can defy Trump, and finding they can do so safely. Now let's talk about the specific dynamics of the vote. The Congressional Review Act allows Congress to overturn recent executive actions. It requires a simple majority in both chambers, and the president can veto, but Congress can override with 2/3 majority. So for this vote, the Senate needed 51 votes, and they got exactly that, 51 to 47. 4 Republicans joined 47 Democrats to overturn Trump's tariffs. That's a narrow margin, but it's enough. If even one fewer Republican had defected, the vote would have failed. So Trump came close to avoiding defeat, but close doesn't matter. He lost, and the loss is what people remember. Now Trump can't veto this because he's president. Wait, let me reconsider the context. Actually, based on the scenario in the prompt, Trump is president, and the Senate is overturning his tariffs. So Trump could theoretically veto the Congressional Review Act resolution, but with 51 senators already voting for it, Trump would need to ensure the override doesn't get 2/3. With only 51 voting for it initially, there aren't enough votes to override a veto, so Trump might veto, but politically, the damage is done. The Senate publicly rejected his policy. Whether Trump vetoes or not, everyone knows the Senate majority opposed him, and that's humiliating. Now let's talk about what this means for other issues. If Republicans will vote against Trump on tariffs, what else will they oppose? Trump's emergency declarations might face similar votes. Republicans uncomfortable with Trump's use of emergency powers might vote to overturn them. Trump's immigration policies might be challenged. If they're unpopular or controversial, Republicans might join Democrats in opposing them. Trump's nominees might face more opposition. Republicans might be less willing to rubber stamp Trump's controversial appointments. Trump's legislative agenda is in jeopardy. If Trump can't count on Republican support, he can't pass legislation, can't implement his priorities. So this vote on tariffs opens the door to broader Republican defiance of Trump. Now let's talk about the political implications heading into 2026. Republican candidates are distancing themselves from Trump. They see he's politically weak. They don't want to be associated with his unpopular policies, so they're running on their own brands, emphasizing local issues, avoiding mention of Trump. Primaries might feature anti-Trump Republicans. Candidates might run explicitly against Trump's influence, might criticize his policies, might argue the party needs to move on, and some might win. Democrats are using Trump as a wedge. They're highlighting Republican divisions, saying the GOP is fractured, that they can't govern, that Trump is a liability, and it's working. Trump's ability to help Republicans is questionable. If Trump campaigns for candidates, does it help or hurt? In some districts, Trump is still popular, but in swing districts, Trump might be toxic. So Republican candidates have to calculate whether they want Trump's involvement. Fundraising might shift away from Trump. Donors who see Trump as weak might give to other Republicans, to Senate candidates, to PACs, rather than to Trump-aligned groups. So Trump's financial influence diminishes too. Now, let's talk about Trump's response options. Trump could compromise, could moderate his positions, could work with Republicans to find policies they can support. But Trump's personality makes compromise unlikely. He sees it as weakness, as losing. Trump could double down, could become more aggressive, could attack Republicans who defy him more harshly, but that risks further alienating them, pushing more Republicans into opposition. Trump could try to change Senate rules. He's already calling for eliminating the filibuster, but that requires Republican cooperation. And if Republicans are already defying him, they're not going to change rules to help him. Trump could focus on his base, could give up on persuading skeptical Republicans and independents, could just try to energize his core supporters. But that's a shrinking strategy. can't win general elections with just the base. Trump could resign or step back, could decide the fight isn't worth it. But Trump's ego makes that inconceivable. He'll fight to the bitter end, so Trump doesn't have good options. Every response has downsides, and that's why this defeat is so significant. It shows Trump is trapped, unable to maintain control, unable to reverse his declining influence. Now let's talk about historical context. Presidents often lose influence in their second terms or after losing control of Congress, but Trump's situation is unusual. He's still dominant in rhetoric and media attention, but he's losing actual power over policy and party. That disconnect between perceived power and actual power is striking and unsustainable. Eventually, perception catches up to reality, and Trump's image as a powerful leader collapses. We might be seeing that collapse begin with this Senate vote as a symbolic moment, the moment when Trump's weakness became undeniable, when his own party publicly rejected him, when his influence clearly waned. Historians might look back on this vote as a turning point, the beginning of the end of Trump's dominance over the Republican Party. So yeah, this is where we are. The Senate voting 51-47 to overturn Trump's tariffs. 4 Republicans defecting. Trump suffering a public humiliating defeat, and Trump's influence over the GOP clearly declining. Let's talk about what happens next. Okay, so let's break down what Trump's Senate humiliation means for his political future and for the Republican Party. Because this isn't just one bad vote, this is a sign of broader changes. First, let's talk about Trump's immediate political standing. Trump looks weak. When your own party votes against you publicly, you look weak. You look unable to control your coalition, unable to enforce discipline, and in politics, looking weak makes you weak. Trump's credibility suffers. He's claimed to be the best negotiator, the smartest person on trade, but if the Senate rejects his trade policy, what does that say about his expertise? His credibility on economic issues takes a major hit. Trump's leverage over Republicans diminishes. He used to threaten Republicans into compliance, but if 4 senators defied him and survived politically, others will follow. Trump's threats become empty. His leverage disappears. Trump's 2026 influence is questionable. Can Trump help Republicans win in 2026, or is he a liability? This vote suggests he might be a liability, that Republicans do better by distancing themselves from Trump. Trump's post-presidency plans are affected. If Trump wants to remain kingmaker of the GOP, he needs Republicans to fear and respect him, but this vote shows they don't, so Trump's post-presidency influence might be much less than he hopes. Second, let's talk about the Republican Party's direction. The party is fracturing between Trump loyalists and mainstream Republicans, between those who think Trump is essential and those who think he's a liability. This vote shows that fracture clearly. Mainstream Republicans are asserting themselves. They're willing to buck Trump on policy, to vote based on constituent interests rather than loyalty. That's a shift back toward normal politics. The 2026 primaries will be battles over Trump. Will Republicans nominate Trump loyalists or mainstream candidates? This vote suggests mainstream candidates might have a chance, that Trump's endorsement isn't decisive. The party might move on from Trump, not immediately, but gradually, as Republicans realize they can win without him, as new leaders emerge, as Trump's influence continues to wane, or the party might double down on Trump. The base might punish Republicans who defy Trump, might primary them, might force the party further into Trump's camp, but this vote suggests that's less likely than it once seemed. Third, let's talk about policy implications. Trump's tariffs might be rolled back. If the House also votes to overturn them, and if there are enough votes to override a veto, the tariffs are gone. That's a major policy shift. Other Trump policies might face similar challenges. Emergency declarations, executive orders, regulations, all of it could be challenged by Congress. With Republicans potentially joining Democrats, Trump's legislative agenda is dead. If Trump can't count on Republican votes, he can't pass legislation. His final years might be marked by legislative paralysis. Gridlock. Congress might reassert itself. After years of deference to Trump, Congress might start exercising its constitutional powers again, passing legislation, overriding vetoes, checking executive power. That would be a return to constitutional norms, but it would represent a major defeat for Trump's vision of presidential power. Fourth, let's talk about what this means for Trump personally. Trump will be angry. He doesn't handle defeat well. He'll rage. He'll attack. He'll lash out at Republicans who voted against him. Trump might become more erratic. As his power slips away, Trump might become more desperate, more willing to take risks, more aggressive in his tactics. That could lead to more mistakes. Trump's legal troubles continue, and now they're compounded by political weakness. Trump can't rely on political power to shield him from legal accountability. Trump's business might suffer. Political weakness affects business relationships. Partners might distance themselves. Deals might fall through. Trump's brand is damaged. Trump's isolation increases. As Republicans distance themselves, As allies abandon him, Trump becomes more isolated, more alone, and that's psychologically difficult for someone who craves attention and validation. Fifth, let's talk about Democrats' response. Democrats will highlight this defeat, will use it in campaigns, will say even Republicans don't support Trump, that he's weak, that he's failed. Democrats will try to peel off moderate Republicans, will make the case that Republicans should work with Democrats rather than with Trump, that bipartisan cooperation is possible. Democrats will push for more Congressional Review Act votes, trying to overturn other Trump actions, knowing that they might get Republican support. Democrats will paint Trump as a lame duck, unable to accomplish anything, ineffective, and they'll argue voters should support Democrats to get things done. 6. Let's talk about what happens next. More Republicans might defect on future votes. Seeing that the 4 senators who voted against Trump aren't being destroyed politically, others might join, creating a cascade. Trump might try to retaliate, might endorse primary challengers against the defectors, might campaign against them, but if those efforts fail, Trump looks even weaker. The House might vote similarly. If the House also votes to overturn Trump's tariffs, that compounds Trump's humiliation, shows both chambers rejecting him. Trump might veto, forcing Congress to override. That creates a dramatic showdown. And if Congress overrides, Trump's weakness is undeniable. Polls might shift. As Trump's political weakness becomes apparent, polling might show declining support, both among Republicans and among general electorate. Media narrative shifts from Trump as dominant force to Trump as declining power, from Trump as future of GOP to Trump as past. That narrative shift becomes self-fulfilling. So what's the bottom line? The Senate voted 51-47 to overturn Trump's reciprocal tariffs. 4 Republican senators joined all Democrats in a bipartisan rebuke. Trump suffered a public, humiliating defeat. One analyst called one of the most humiliating defeats of Trump's entire political career. The vote shows Trump's declining influence over the Republican Party, shows Republicans are willing to defy him publicly, shows his threats don't work like they used to, shows his endorsements aren't as valuable. The defeat is compounded by being the 3rd Senate rebuke in 7 days. That's a pattern, not a fluke. That's systematic rejection of Trump's leadership. Trump's credibility takes a massive hit. His claims to expertise on trade are undermined. His image as a strong leader is damaged. His power over Republicans is shown to be weaker than believed. Republicans running in 2026 are distancing themselves from Trump, calculating that running against Trump's positions is safer than running with them, that Trump is more liability than asset. The party is fracturing between Trump loyalists and mainstream Republicans, and this vote shows mainstream Republicans asserting themselves, willing to buck Trump on policy. Trump's response options are limited. He can attack, but that might push more Republicans away. He can compromise, but his ego won't allow it. He can double down, but that hasn't worked. He's trapped, without good moves, watching his power slip away. This is Trump's humiliation, public, bipartisan, undeniable. His own party voting against him, rejecting his signature policy, showing he doesn't control them anymore. And there's no spinning this as a win, no claiming this is part of some master plan. Everyone saw what happened. Trump lost, his party defied him, and his power is crumbling. Stay tuned, because if Republicans feel emboldened to vote against Trump once, they'll do it again. More defections are coming, more defeats are likely, and Trump's influence will continue to wane. This Senate vote might be remembered as the beginning of the end, the moment Trump's control over the GOP broke, the moment his weakness became undeniable, and it all played out on the Senate floor, with cameras rolling, with the whole country watching. Trump got humiliated, and everyone saw it.